Welcome to What's Next with Eric Wood, where we will prepare you to make your what's next in life your best yet. Our next guest is Scott Harrison, and Scott is the founder and CEO of Charity Water, a nonprofit that has mobilized over 1 million donors around the world to fund over 28,000 water projects in 26 countries that will serve more than 8.2 million people. Scott has been recognized on Fortune's 40 under 40 list, Forbes Impact 30 list, and was ranked number 10 in Fast Company's 100 most creative people in business. He has an incredible story of transformation that can be heard in full in his book, Thirst, and we will unpack some of that journey here on the podcast. If you haven't already, please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you tune in weekly. And also, if you haven't already, please go to Amazon and pre-order my book, Tackle What's Next, and the link to that is in the show notes. Thanks and enjoy. Scott, welcome to the show, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me. This will be fun.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this for a long time. Mutual friend of ours, Brad Lomenick, connected us. So I have respected your work. I've got to learn your story, and I'm so excited for those that haven't heard it to hear it. But let's jump right into the good stuff. And I've heard and read you say that you declared spiritual, moral, and emotional bankruptcy before starting Charity Water, and that stemmed from you working in the nightclub scene in New York City. So inform me and the listeners, what was your role in those nightclubs, and how did you get into that line of work in the first place?
Yeah, well, it was an act of rebellion. I mean, it was the classic cliche prodigal son story. Woke up at 18 and said, I don't want to go to church anymore. I don't want to play by the rules. I want to go sow my oats in New York City. I want to smoke. I want to drink. I want to chase girls, and I want to have fun and live life. And, I'd grown up in a very conservative Christian family, only child. Mom became disabled when I was 4. So, I was in a caregiver role and just didn't have, the childhood that I thought I deserved or wanted.
Right.
So moved to Manhattan and came across this bizarre occupation where if you wanted to rebel in style, you could as a nightclub promoter. This was a job where you would get paid to get drunk and party. And the more people, you could get inside the right clubs, the more we kind of climb up the social ladder. So that was it, man. At 18 years old, 3 years before I'm legally allowed to be in clubs, I'm throwing parties. I'm, working on guest lists. I'm putting movie stars and athletes and, Goldman Sachs bankers inside clubs, and just standing up in the DJ booth, watching everybody spend money. And the business was, it's kind of an asset light business. So you're the promoter, you bring the people who spend the money, and if you're lucky, get you in the newspaper because they're famous. And then when they're no longer interested in going to that club, you just go to a new club, right? And you bring everybody, and you just take 15 or 20% off the top.
Yeah. And so as a promoter, you don't have to take all the liability.
No risk.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And that was very smart of you to do. And maybe not the most morally sound profession, or however you want to put it, but pretty business savvy of you. A lot of that will lead to success later down the road, helping people around the world, which we will get to. Just a couple things on that. Me and my wife are trying to raise our children in a conservative Christian home.
Yep.
You being a father now yourself.
Me too.
Yeah, exactly. So what advice would you have to prevent a potential of a child feeling like maybe they got robbed of a childhood and now we need to rebel? Or, because you want to give them the freedom to make their own choices.
Yep.
But you also want to guide them in that direction. Do you have any insight on that?
For me, it's 3 letters. Fun.
Nice.
I want my kids to have fun. And there are a lot of ways to have, really good, clean fun through travel, through experiences, to kind of, life is rich, right, Eric? And I want to kind of show them the world. I want to also show them the needs in the world and how they can contribute. And at a young age, use their time or their talent or their money in the service of others. But I think I'm just trying to be a fun dad. I'm trying to make church fun. I'm trying to just put them in situations where, they light up with joy and excitement.
I love that. I love that. I'm going to be even more intentional now hearing about that from you. I try to be that fun dad. We talk constantly about being joy spreaders. Woods, we spread joy. We
Yep.
refresh others. That's what we're here to do. My little girl, she's 7. Each day before school, I'll say, "All right, what are you going to make today?" And she'll say, "The best day ever." I said, "What are you going to do? Spread joy. That's your only
Oh, I
expectation
love it.
today.
I
Go
love it.
spread joy."
I have a 6-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son, and we have a couple family mottos. One is you go first, and well, the other one actually was who cares, and that didn't serve us well. We were like, we're the Harrisons, who cares? Like it was a joke and tongue in cheek, and now it's you go first, and I'm trying to teach them to, to give the preferential treatment to someone else, to let them have the best seat.
Yeah.
And I love spreading joy, so I might have to add that.
Yeah, that's really good stuff, and that's based upon Proverbs 11:25, which is our kind of family verse. But for children, it becomes a lot easier if you just say, "Hey, spread joy," as opposed to "A generous person will prosper, and he who refreshes others will be refreshed." Even though that is what's on the wall as you leave our
Love it.
house and head into the garage. But getting back to your story, what was the moment that led you to decide that you needed to make a shift in your life?
Yeah. So I had one day I'm 28 years old and half my body goes numb.
Whoa.
And now, if you were looking at my life from the outside, here's a guy who smokes 2 packs of Marlboro Reds a day. I have a cocaine problem. I have an ecstasy problem. I have an MDMA problem, whatever I can get my hands on. I have a gambling problem. I have a pornography problem. I have a drinking problem. I mean, I'm living a lifestyle where dinner takes place at 10 p.m., the first club at 12, the after hours at 4 a.m. And, at noon, I'm stumbling home to sleep till 7 p.m. and do it over again, on the nights that we were working. So, maybe no wonder I started having some health issues. But, Eric, on a much more serious note, I think for the first time in 10 years, I was faced with mortality.
Hmm.
And what if something was wrong with me? What if I had a brain tumor? What if I was going to die? I mean, I'd been living like I was going to live forever. And I just started asking some existential questions. Well, did I believe any of that stuff from my church background? Did I believe that there was a heaven and a hell? If I still did, I knew where I'd be going. And I hadn't done a single thing that had any redemption in 10 years. I hadn't given to charity. I was just a hedonist consumer of pleasure. And it was really kind of a wake-up call. It's almost like, the game of musical chairs had been going on for 10 years. And for the first time, the music stopped and I had nowhere to sit down. And it was this jarring moment. And that led me, to kind of try to find my way back to church and spirituality and faith, and asking deeper questions of, what do I want on my tombstone? Here lies a nightclub promoter who got 1 million people drunk. Probably not. Probably not the impact that I wanted to make in the world. And yeah, just realizing I had lived for myself, and I've kind of lived my way into the proverbial pig pen. And it didn't feel good. And I made this deal with God where I said I would tithe one of the 10 years that I'd selfishly wasted. I would sell everything I owned, and I would try to serve people in need, in a country in need, and see if I could be useful. Could I bring anything to the humanitarian space? And it was an interesting moment, when I got there, and then I started applying to the famous charities that I tangentially heard of. So I applied to World Vision and I'm denied. I applied to Samaritan's Purse and I'm denied. Save the Children and Doctors Without Borders and the Red Cross. And of course, nobody wants a nightclub promoter. They don't know what box to put a club promoter in. And, I was fortunate God had a plan for me. And I think it was probably the 11th or 12th organization wrote me back and said, if I was willing to go live in the poorest country in the world, which was Liberia at that time, that had just come out of a 14-year civil war. And if I was willing to pay them $500 every month for the pleasure of living in the poorest country in the world in this mission, then I could join. And I'm like, this is perfect. This is the opposite of my life.
Wow.
And, things changed very quickly. I had this moment where I was going to be joining a hospital ship, group of humanitarian doctors and surgeons who'd come from all over the world to provide free medical care to people in need in West Africa. And I was going to be the photojournalist on this mission. So I was going to take pictures and write stories that would help with fundraising and awareness. And, I still was holding on to the cigarettes and the drinking and a little bit of the online gambling at the time. And I just knew, the night before I joined the mission had to be the last night. And I remember going out with a bang. I probably smoked 60 cigarettes. I drank way too much that night, and then walked up this gangway onto this massive hospital ship, and it was almost like a prophetic vision of like the new life. I was going to sail away to a new continent and leave, the 10 years of vice, there behind on the ground. And, that was the last cigarette I had. It was the last time I ever gambled, the last time I looked at a pornographic image. And I, kind of just quit all of the stuff that I'd been involved with to hopefully let a new story unfold.
Wow.
And thank God this organization took me.
No doubt
Apparently
about it.
I reeked like beer when I surrendered my passport on my first day.
Well, thank God they let you get on the airplane in that state. But I say that, and circling back on a couple things. One, when you're talking about raising money for an organization, I would think a club promoter would be a very attractive individual to bring in. He's going to have the most connections. He knows how to deal with people. He knows how to bring people together for something. It may be in a nightclub, but he's going to be able to one that's going to help raise the money and fundraise and do events. And so that's the way I would look at it. But I understand. I don't necessarily run a nonprofit at this point in my life myself to make those decisions, but that would make sense to me. And I just
it did. It turned out to be part of the story.
Absolutely. But let me ask you this. So for people out there that want to make a change in life, they want to change their habits. From observing your story, would your advice be just do it now and cut out the bad habit, or start the new one? Or what would your advice be there?
A couple things. I mean, once there was the desire to change. I had fully played out a life of sex, drugs, rock and roll, tastes of money, fame, private planes, and realized that at the end of that, there was not joy.
Wow.
And I remember this moment in South America on a New Year's Eve, renting this epic villa. My girlfriend was on the cover of fashion magazines. We flew private. There are people like servants waiting on us, picking up our towels as we moved from pool to pool. And I just remember saying, like, is this it? Mm-hmm. And then I looked around and I'm like, actually, nobody's happy. The people that are richer, somebody always has more. It was this pursuit of more. So I think that, again, I'm reluctant to give advice to others, but for me, that was a critical moment, was kind of wanting to change. And then I think, my environment also had to change. So I quit smoking and quit drinking and quit drugs, but I moved in with a bunch of Christian doctors. I don't know that I would have been able to stay as a nightclub promoter in New York City and quit smoking and drinking and drugs, because that's what the entire environment thrived on. Right. But it's not cool to be on a hospital ship and smoke Marlboro Reds, or do lines of cocaine if you could even get it. So I think, the intention of the environment. I mean, I moved in. I am now immersed with a group of Christian humanitarian medical staff who have given up their vacation time to provide free care to people in need. It was the opposite of the party intention or the selfish intention. So I think, environment really matters as well. It's the wanting to change, For me, I'm an Enneagram 8. So I like everything has to be extreme. I couldn't imagine like smoking less or doing less drugs or, looking at less pornography. Like everything had to be cold turkey to make sense in just the way that I live.
I'm an all or nothing guy myself. And generally, I just get into pickleball. Well, now it's 3 to 4 mornings a week. My wife's like, you can't just do anything halfway. It's golf,
Yeah.
it's working out. And so there can be positive things. I've also seen in my life, it can be negative things too.
Yeah.
And so I have to be careful as well. And I loved how you talked about changing your environment. I talk all the time about you become the average of the average of the 5 people you spend the most time
Yeah.
with. And so your environment is so crucial. If you want to drink less, don't hang out in a bar as much. And, it's just, and if you don't want to eat bad, don't keep bad food in the house, make yourself
and let me
healthy.
say, like hanging out with doctors and surgeons was way more inspiring than nightclub promoters or DJs.
Right.
The fruit from their lives, the impact that they were making on the world was very different. So it wasn't like I really missed, the old life. I was enamored with a life of service. I mean, this is what I'd been missing.
Okay. People can read about this more in detail in your book, but you decide that providing clean water around the world is going to be your mission. You're going to dedicate your life to service. And so when you started Charity Water, 1 in 10 people in the world were without access to clean water. The world population has grown, and that number is now down to 1 in 6 people.
Yep.
So that's an enormous impact. But let's rewind a touch. What were the initial challenges that came with starting a nonprofit that you're going to go try and impact the world with?
Yeah. Well, I came across the issue, through the lens of these doctors. So here we were in Liberia. We would bring a bunch of doctors and thousands more people would turn up than we were able to actually help. So, then you start asking the question, well, why is everybody sick? Why are there 5,000 sick people standing in a parking lot, outside a football stadium, a soccer stadium, to see the doctors that have come? And what I learned was 2 things. Number 1, half the country was drinking dirty water. So half the people living in the country were drinking from swamps or ponds or muddy rivers. And then I learned that half the disease in the country was because people were drinking dirty water and didn't have access to sanitation, toilets, or hygiene, hand washing. So, for me, it was kind of after a 2-year experience there, it was just jumping to the root cause of so much of the sickness and disease. We were treating the symptoms, but the most basic need for health wasn't met for millions of people. So, I kind of came back with this clear idea of how I thought I could contribute. I wasn't a doctor. I didn't know how to run a ship. I wasn't a naval person, but maybe I could carry the flag for clean water for the world.
Right.
And maybe I could raise awareness. Maybe I could build a movement. Maybe I could promote clean water for humans. I mean, that's a party that everybody should want to come to.
Right.
At the party where we announce that the entire world has clean water to drink. We have gotten every human being the most basic need for life, for health. So day one was, 15 and a half years ago. It was kind of a fun turn. I actually launched Charity Water in a nightclub because it's just all that I knew how to do.
Yep.
And I came back to New York after these 2 years volunteering. My friends, said I wasn't any fun. I'm not partying. I'm not drinking. I'm not, hanging out. I'm showing them pictures of dirty water on a laptop in nightclubs. I'm in the DJ booth, killing the DJ's buzz, with pictures I've just taken, a few weeks earlier. But I had this clear vision. And if you'd asked me, 15 years ago, what are you up to? I would have said, I'm going to bring clean water to every single person on planet Earth or die trying. So it's a very clear idea. And I got some people to donate a club and I got them to throw an open bar. And then I invited everybody on my list and I said, day one of the charity, come to the club. but you have to donate $20 to get in the door. And at the end of the night, we'd collected $15,000.
Wow.
And I said, 100% of everything we collected is going to go build our first well in Uganda, where I'd just gotten back from. And we took the money there. We built the first well. We photographed it. We took video of the clean water flowing. We took satellite images, and we sent the Google Earth photo and the video back to those 700 people. And we said, your $20 did this. And now let's just do a lot more. And, you know, that was $700 million ago. And now 15 million people and 111,000 water projects that we built across 29 countries. But it started just with a group of people coming together and giving $20.
That's absolutely incredible. I love the start of that. And so now what it's grown to, I'm sure we could do an entire podcast on leading a company and leading an organization, and we'll save that for the next one maybe. But so I have my own, I had my own foundation. I converted it to a fund under a children's hospital in Buffalo. I'm on the board of two different foundations and organizations. I just have a couple questions. So one, as a board member, I've seen time and time again where the leaders feel very guilty about taking a strong enough salary that they deserve when you work for a nonprofit. They feel like they don't deserve to be paid what's fair for their time. Have you felt any of that guilt in your own role as CEO and founder of Charity Water?
Yeah, it's a great question. We have a really unique business model, which I think helps with that a little bit, where from day one, 100% of all donations that we've ever taken from the public go directly to build these water projects. And we actually have a separate bank account for overhead that 130 families pay for. So I pay our team really well. I'm trying to recruit from Google, from Twitter, from, you know, Apple, and we try to pay highly competitive salaries because it doesn't come out of the public donations.
Right.
The 130 donors are often pressing me to get even better talent and to offer better benefits for that. So, you know, in a way, I think if it was coming from the public's donations, it was coming from, you know, the kids' lemonade stand money. It was coming from the $100 that, you know, somebody gave online. It would be a lot harder. But it's, you know, again, our overhead because of our model is paid for by business leader, by entrepreneurs, you know, by the founders of some of the tech companies that we're familiar with, who realize that to run an organization with high capacity, with excellence, you must recruit and retain the best talent. You're only as good as your people. So that, I think, has been a competitive advantage for us because of our business model. And, you know, look, I mean, I think I'm always, you know, I counsel a lot of nonprofits, and I'm trying to tell them, you know, to typically go to their board and ask for a raise, because what happens is the best people often leave nonprofits.
Yep.
And we lose them. We lose talent, you know, and then they go work for a bank. And there's nothing wrong with working for a bank, but the hunger issue lost a talented person because they weren't able to provide for their 3 kids, you know, or their grandparents who are also, you know, being supported through their income. So yeah, I'm a pretty big proponent for paying for talent. That said, you know, Charity Water's raised, you know, over $700 million. We have never bought a business class ticket for myself or anybody at the organization. So we all fly coach, you know, so there's still kind of, you know, you have your stewardship also needs to be a principle. Believe me, when I get upgraded, because I'm a million miler, you know, multi-million miler, I'll take it. But we don't want to use our donor dollars, you know, even our overhead money for, you know, for a $10,000 flight to Africa when we can get the flight for $1,000. You know, we'd rather that money goes back into the mission. So I think it's kind of a dance sometimes between stewardship and also making sure you can recruit and retain that talent.
Yeah, I love that answer. I love the structure to where that money's not coming from the donations. You have public funding that is providing the resources for you and your team. And now you can stand up in an event, you can stand in a speaking engagement, come on a podcast, and speak with confidence that every single dollar that you
Yeah.
donate is going to where it should. And where
Eric, we even pay back, a lot of people don't know this, but we even pay back credit card fees, which 15 years ago, when we weren't taking any credit card donations, was like, oh, let's just make sure 100% means 100%. Today, I think it's $700,000 that
wow.
we will pay back that Amex, Visa, MasterCard 2 or 3%, so that when someone gives $100, even though we only got 97, we're sending the $100 they intended to give to Uganda or Cambodia or Malawi, and we're able to track that. So it's kind of a unique business model. It's worked really well for us, and I think it's allowed us to scale the organization, pretty quickly. We raised over $100 million last year, thanks to donors from all over the world, who are really attracted to that business model, knowing exactly where their money goes and then being able to track it.
Man, that's incredible. When you're raising that much money, I understand that you do a lot online. This is a massive organization at this point, but what have you found to be the best methods of fundraising throughout your career that you've seen?
Yeah, tell true stories.
Okay.
Just tell true stories. Show people. We've made over 1,000 videos. There's a video on charitywater.org that's now had over 100 million views. It just tells the story of people in need of clean water. It tells the story of how lives are transformed when clean water is brought into a community, and then it just invites people to be a part of that. We're big on trying to inspire people, trying to invite them rather than guilting them or shaming them. And I think there's an old brand of charity, we're seeing less of it now, where the kids and the flies landing on their face and the sad eyes looking at the camera, and the 800 number that comes on the bottom of the screen. I mean, it's a joy to give. This. It's a joy to give of your time as you sit on boards. It's a joy to give your family's money towards causes you care about. And, I think the more people give, the more they give, right? We kind of want to, we want to have that muscle working. And what I focus a lot on is how do we show the donors the impact of that gift? Because if we can close that loop, if we can show them the village where their $100 went or their $10,000, the well that it built, they'll be encouraged and they'll want to continue to engage and be even more generous.
That's incredible. Tell real stories. I'm going to put that.
Yeah, tell true stories. Just tell true stories. Because when you through the work, with the children's hospital, or there are stories and stories and stories. And I think sometimes, charities often go out with data or statistics or facts, that doesn't move people. And I think it's, you need that. I mean, 770 million people don't have clean water. That is 2 Americas full of people. But if I tell you about, a 13-year-old girl who is walking 7 hours every single day, who can't go to school because she has to go walk for the water, and then she has to haul 40 pounds of dirty water on her back that she's giving to her younger brother and sister that she knows could kill them of diarrhea or dysentery, and if I show you a picture of her and the water source and her walk, it's just different. She becomes 1 out of 771 million people. It's a story. It's a person.
So if a country, if an area of village has no clean water, I'm assuming that they don't have a lot of technology to reach out to you guys. How do you guys identify these areas that do not have the clean water?
Yeah, so we now have a local network of 49 operating partners across 29 countries. And, imagine in Ethiopia, there's 350 people. Their job is taking the charity water funding and drilling as many wells as possible, building as many rainwater harvesting systems, constructing as many springs, right? We have about 14 different water technologies now across the world. So they are going out, not only constructing, but then they're planning teams that are planning next year's work. And they're kind of doing advance, they're going into villages, they're surveying, They're looking at the water sources. How many people live here? Can we find water? What would be the right solution? And then they're scheduled. So in many of the countries where we work, we would know where we'd be working over the next 2 years, as long as we can keep raising the money to fund those projects. So we're always out in front. It's almost like publishing the schedule, right? Like, you know, the schedule of the year and who you're playing and where you're going. And then you show up for it.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. So I can tell on all of your appearances, I've seen you, even this one, how excited you are to talk about charity water. You're doing fulfilling work in your life. There's many out there that feel like I'm not doing work, or I'm not fulfilled in life with where my career's at, my hobbies, my passions. What advice would you have to them? Would it be to take a leap of faith and go chase something like you did? What would be your advice there?
I mean, I think you have to find, you know, your passion, something that lights you up. For you, it was playing, right? You know, now it's learning and giving. I think, you know, with a lot of social entrepreneurs, which wasn't even a term 15 years ago, you know, you go through life and you just find something that you say, like, not on my watch. Like, it's not okay that 700 million people are drinking disgusting water, and we know how to solve this problem. So I'm going to go solve that problem. And I've been at that for 16 years now. Somebody else might say it's not okay that a child is trafficked and tied to a bed. It's not okay that a child is going to bed hungry when, you know, they open up their refrigerator and say, you know, we have an abundance of food. We're throwing out stuff that's gone bad. Right. So I think it's maybe being open to, I heard somebody many years ago kind of call it a holy discontent. You know, there's just something that, you know, water for me. I mean, I used to sell Voss water in my nightclubs for $10 a bottle. And I remember people would come in, they would order $100 worth of water, and they wouldn't even open the bottles because they're drinking champagne instead. It was just like to have the option.
Right.
Right. And then I'm in, you know, I've been to 70 countries now. You know, I'm in Ethiopia and I'm watching a child drink from a swamp. And I know that underneath her village is clean water. 20 stories underground is a massive aquifer that can bring health and hope to the 300 people living there. But what's needed is $10,000. Well, I know people who have $10,000. Or I can go out and talk to people who have $10,000, or I can go find 10 people who have $1,000, right? Or 100 people who have $100. So, and then you get that village done. And, you know, that's kind of the approach that we've taken. And then you look around one day and, you know, now I'm 47 and we've done 111,000 of them. But hopefully, you know, 4 or 5 years from now, I look back and we've done 250,000 or 500,000.
How realistic is it to say that in your lifetime, and I know even tomorrow's not guaranteed, but
yeah,
you live an average lifetime, and how realistic is it to say that charity water is going to bring clean water to every human on earth?
We are one player in the space, which is growing. There's more energy. You know, we're helping about 2 million people a year. So it would take us, you do the math. It would take us 350 years if it was just us. There's a lot of progress that's been made. You know, you said that perfectly early on. We started out with 1 in 10. Now we're down to 1 in 6, 1 in 7, even as population has grown. So we are seeing this problem being solved. I'd argue it's not fast enough. You know, we are not at the velocity that we need to be. We haven't gathered the momentum, the animation from, you know, the movement that we need. But, you know, there's somebody listening today that never even thought about water, you know, or hasn't thought about water and has taken it for granted, you know, all month, all year, maybe your whole life, and could get engaged. You know, there's a kid that might be listening that might go sell lemonade and bring 6 people access to clean water. That might start a club at their university, you know, 7 or 8 years from now and get involved in that way. So, you know, I'm really hopeful about the future and, you know, so excited. I mean, we know how to solve this problem. Eric, there are problems we don't know how to solve. You know, my mom died of pancreatic cancer. No one had any idea how to treat stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Right. And I know there's, you know, billions of dollars of research going to, the ALSs and, Alzheimer's and many of these diseases that confound us. Water's not like that. There's not a single human being right now who we're scratching our head saying, oh, we don't know how to help them. We know how to help all 771 million humans. Now, we haven't created the will to do it. We haven't raised the money and the awareness and the, the movement to do it, but we actually know how to do it. So that is satisfying at the end of the day, knowing you're working on a solvable problem.
And helping 2 million people a year, that's nothing to shake a stick at either. So although that is just making a dent in it each year.
Well, I'll tell you, Eric, because you've played in a lot of stadiums. When I'm feeling down, I realize that, we're doing Madison Square Garden every 3.5 days.
Wow.
So I was at the Garden in New York City with my wife for a concert, and I'm like, Charity Water is helping this many people. When we start work on Monday, by Wednesday noon, 20,000 people have gotten access to clean water. And then we're going to do it again in the next 3.5 days. So that's how we kind of think about it. Every minute, every second, someone is getting clean water as the movement grows, as more and more people, look, it's easy to accept apathy when it comes to any paralyzing global issue, right? What could I do about world hunger? What could I do about slavery? What could I do about like the people that don't have shelter in the world or the people who don't have water? And I think what it takes is people to just, and kids do this so well. Kids are like, oh, I can do something about this. Like, how much? My kid asked me the other day, he's like, how much again does it cost to get one person clean water? And I'm like, $40. And he had saved up $130. So he's doing the math. He's like, so I could give 3 people clean water and have $10 left over. For kids, it's so simple. So I'm excited about the future.
Yeah, and I'm excited for you, and I promise we will help support your mission and anything we can ever do to make that happen. Charitywater.org. We'll put the link to that in the show notes. Follow Scott on social media. Follow Charity Water on social media as well. I got a few recurring questions for you.
Yeah.
Got here. Besides your own, what's your favorite book?
Oh my gosh, I love Sacred Fire by Ronald Rolheiser. I've probably read it 3 or 4 times now.
Okay.
I also love John Mark Comer's book on hurry.
I'll have to check those out. What you've mentioned it a few times, but what role does your faith play in your life?
Yeah, so Charity Water is actually not a faith-based organization at all. We never have been. Many of our donors come from faith communities. They're tithing, they're giving, out of they're animated by their faith. Many are not. And when I started, I just love the idea that this was such a big problem. You shouldn't have to do what I do on a Sunday to work at Charity Water, to volunteer, or to give. So that's been kind of one of the greatest blessings, is pitching a really big tent. We had Muslim school kids from Dubai send in $60,000 during Ramadan once.
Wow.
And 100% of that money went to help people get access to clean water. We had a Jewish synagogue once write a check for a well and say it was the first gift they had ever given to a non-Jewish organization, but they knew where the money was going to go, and 100% was really compelling to them. So that's kind of, long answer to your question. I get to live out my faith through my work, but kind of without the strings attached, right? We're not handing out Bibles. We're not proselytizing. I don't feel like I'm called to that specifically. And look, it aligns with my theology, Eric. Like in heaven, I know people are not drinking dirty water. Okay. In heaven, no mother is holding a child who drank from a swamp and is dying of diarrhea. So, I get to kind of bring the kingdom of God as I imagine it to earth through my work by all means possible, and invite everybody to be a part of it.
That's absolutely beautiful. This is not a regular recurring question, although it may be now. If you're going to the gas station, you're grabbing a bottle of water and you have all the options, what brand are you going with?
It's funny. This is terrible. The cheapest. Like the
Because
Adirondack are
because
like,
it's
I'm
so
not paying
clean.
up for smart water or vitamin water or any of that. I just had a long road trip with my 8-year-old, and I bought like, I was like, Deer Park. I don't know, the cheapest.
I like that. I respect that. That gives me a little peace of mind too. But you know it's clean. You know, that's the
Yeah.
difference. It's like, would there be a touch of a benefit of one that didn't have the electrolyte stripped of it already? Potentially, but
Let
it's
me
clean water.
let me just say one last thing. I mean, for people listening who probably, here we are talking about bottled water, which is just such a part of our lives, right? We have the margin, the income margin, where you're not thinking about $2 or $3 at at a gas station, to buy a bottle, or on your way to the gym. It's we're buying this for convenience, even though like our water's fine. We could
Hmm.
drink from our toilets compared to what the 771 million people have. Guy that works for me was on a trip to Africa, and he saw the water crisis for the first time. Lives in a modest 3-bedroom house in Tennessee. Came back and he counted his taps. He said, I wonder how many places in my, call it a 2,000, 1,800 square foot house. 18.
Wow.
And if you think about it, the washer, right? The toilet, the shower, the sink,
The
right?
hose.
Like the hose, right? The garden hose. We really do take clean water for granted, and we were born into the 90%. And that's what's been fun, is inviting people who have to share their resources and make this basic need available for others.
Absolutely. All right, last one for me. This is what's next with Eric Wood. What's next for Scott Harrison? What do you got coming down the line in this immediate future?
Well, I am excited about trying to reinvent my role for this next season of Charity Water, and really focusing on innovation. How should we be thinking about Web3? How should we be thinking about the metaverse? How should we be thinking about experiences? How can we bring our donors and supporters into the story? How can we create visceral, immersive experiences for them? How can we connect them to their donations in a way that will inspire more generosity and more engagement? So it's maybe what's new, what haven't we done yet that could take us into a greater impact to come.
That's excellent. Scott, I can't thank you enough for your time. I can't thank you enough for the impact that you're having, the inspiration that you give to so many, including myself. I love following along, and I love who you are as a person too. Your most recent Instagram post is a book on parenting that I'll likely purchase here recently too. So you use your social media in a way to make this enormous impact, trying to bring clean water to every person on earth. And then you also do the little things too, like trying to make being a fun dad a cool thing, and using that platform, which all came from an incredible story of transformation. So I just want to honor you in that way, and thank you again.
Thanks, man. It's been great to chat with you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure.